Welcome to the DNA of Things, where we explore the powerful intersection of DNA, environment, and behavior to unlock human potential. Today's guest is Nicole Castellano, Executive Director of the American Porphyria Foundation. Her journey with acute hepatic porphyria is marked by her transformation from patient to passionate advocate, and her work sheds light on how DNA and technology can accelerate rare disease diagnosis and improve care. In this episode, we dive into Nicole's personal story and her decade-long search for a diagnosis, including the profound effects of undiagnosed porphyria on her health, career, and life. From her journey, we transition into her advocacy with the American Porphyria Foundation, the current advancements in DNA testing, and how partnerships like theirs with sequencing.com are pushing the boundaries of patient empowerment. And as we close, listeners will gain insights into the APF's global impact, the importance of genetic testing, and how technological advances are set to transform rare disease care. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, this is going to be an exciting journey exploring, innovations and personal journeys in rare disease and rare disease management. So in particular, I have with me Nicole Castellano, who is the executive director of the American Porphyria Foundation, or APF for short. And it's been really exciting to get to know you, Nicole, over the last few months. In particular, we were connected, I believe, in Rare Disease Month, which was February of this year.
Yep.
Learned a lot about your personal journeys, but also the professional, let's say, operation of organizations such as yours. It's a wonderful blend of personal experience, advocacy, professional practice, and I'd really love to get into your story specifically. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about DNA and APF's partnership with sequencing.com, but before we dive into the technology, Nicole, I was wondering, could you share a little bit about your personal journey? How does somebody come to find themselves at an organization like APF, your focus on porphyria? And so what were some of the pivotal moments of your life and your career that led to the career change, I think, in the last couple of years, insofar as joining the American Porphyria Foundation?
Well, just in general, I would say that for when I did get sick, I wasn't able to work for a long time. And this is the first time I've been able to work full time for a very long time. And but basically, before porphyria, I had been an honor student, a pilot. I was an entrepreneur. I had started my own business, kind of following the footsteps of my parents. I was just very outgoing and traveled a lot, and just I have family in Italy, and just from skating, I was a world-class figure skating champion with my brother on roller skates. And so we traveled a lot for that, and everything was going really, really well. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I started getting these pains. And the first time it happened, I was actually that when it was really bad. Now that I look back, I can see that there were probably two other attacks that I had, but I was just walking down the street, walking my dog, and all of a sudden I just this pain just knocked me on the ground. And I said that I skated, but I actually did pair skating where, I'm up in the air and going full speed. I mean, I've fallen like that on concrete and wood and ice, everything, like many, many times. So I feel like I have a very high pain tolerance. This was something like I had never felt before. I couldn't get up. I could barely move. I crawled to the side of the road, still trying to hold on to my dog. And I'm sitting there. I'm laying down, looking up at the sky, thinking, this is it. I'm dying. I mean, it was so bad. And that's kind of when it really started in earnest. And it was from there, all of those great things that have been going on in my life, I basically became a shadow of my former self. I had a really hard time working, but I was still pushing myself. I was in the ER like 15 times once in 1 month. I had long hospital stays, many hospital stays, but long ones. They were testing. Everything was coming back normal. I had many surgeries, and all of this is very common for acute hepatic porphyria for this patient journey. I had 9 abdominal surgeries, including a hysterectomy that I didn't need. And because the problem is with porphyria, we call it the little imitator. It looks a lot like IBS and Crohn's disease and endometriosis, right, maybe even Lyme disease. A lot of people have a lot of surgeries, their gallbladder removed. I didn't, but just things like that. And it looks like all these other things that the doctors see day in and day out, and that's what they test for. They look at it and they're like, well, it looks normal. And with rare disease, I'm sick. I'm going to all these doctors. I mean, I went to endocrinologists, gynecologists, and pulmonologists, cardiologists, pain specialists, neurologists, just basically every type of doctor trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And all the normal tests kept coming back, normal. The common tests kept coming back normal. But I mean, there were times it got so bad I was actually paralyzed. I couldn't move. I spent over 2 years in a wheelchair because I was either paralyzed or sometimes just at times just too weak to move. And being an athlete, I had always, and being very healthy, my whole life, I had pretty much, and you think about being confined in a wheelchair and you think, God, that's horrible. And I have to say with the acute porphyrias, the abdominal pain was the first thing. I had chest pain. I felt like I was getting stabbed in the chest, and the pain in the abdomen too. It just feels like you're getting it's this burning, stabbing pain. And I also, I had constipation, nausea, vomiting, and you also get these neuropsychiatric symptoms. Like you get brain fog, but you also get to the point where it's so bad, you're awake, but you don't really know where you are. You're hallucinating. I remember like it was yesterday, sitting on the hospital bed, and my mom was there and everything. Then my brother came in the room, and I was talking to me, sitting on the edge of my bed, and then all of a sudden my mom was there, and I just asked, where'd Paulo go? And she's like, well, he's not here. And I'm like, well, I mean, obviously he's not here, but he probably went to the cafeteria. I'd like, where is he? And she's looking at me like he's not here. And I'm like, well, I understand, but he's probably, can you go find him? And she's like, I'm telling you, he was never here. So that was a hallucination that I had where I was just, talking to him. There were other ones that were scary hallucinations. I know my friend actually said she's even seen grass growing on the walls. It's just, you don't have enough oxygen going to your brain. So it can be very scary. And all these surgeries that I was having to try to find out what this abdominal pain was, any stress on the body was just making whatever I had worse. And now I know porphyria, surgery and stress on the body is a trigger.
Right.
And so it was, I basically got to the point where I think I said I almost died 3 times during my whole journey. But this first time I was working from the hospital, and I was trying to keep my business going, even though I was very, very ill. And I felt a responsibility to my employees, and it was just a really hard decision. But I kind of had to decide: are you, let this business go because you need to live here. If you die, you're not gonna have a chance to do anything else after this. And is as easy of a decision as that sounds, for me, that a lot of my self-esteem was wrapped up in my accomplishments, and I felt like if I close this business, I'm a failure. And that's exactly, I ended up closing the business thinking, if and when I get better, I can start something again. It's not worth, my health. But I felt very guilty. I felt bad about myself. And it was really, really, really hard. I kind of presented this puzzle to doctors that they just didn't know what to do with. I kept getting thrown to pain doctors, because I was in pain. And I know that I needed the pain medication because I was in a lot of pain, but I felt like that was like they were giving up. Like, we don't know what it is. Let's treat the pain. And I kept saying, but what's causing the pain? Why am I in pain? Like, I don't want to be on these painkillers. I want to be working, dancing, flying. I want to be, out living my life. And they just wouldn't know, and so it was very frustrating. And actually what really, I was going to environmental doctors. I was trying to just try anything. Was it mold, in the house? Like, you just try anything, you're grasping for straws. And then finally I decided, well, maybe if I change my diet and I eat less sugar, that's got to be good for me, right? That's healthy. And with porphyria, doing any extreme diets or cutting sugar and carbs out of your diet is, can be, and it was for me, devastating. That's I got to the point where I was so bad. I just, my legs did not work. And I even needed help being carried to the bathroom. I mean, I could not move. And that was really scary. But I didn't really know until afterwards, when I knew that's the porphyria, you need to have enough sugar and carbs. Then I realized, oh, that's probably what I did to myself. So by trying something that I thought would be healthy really kind of put me in a tailspin. So finally, and I'll tell you that, I've seen so many doctors. I normally don't go into this, but I wanted to just tell you, like, since we have some time, the way I got diagnosed was I was at a teaching hospital in Milwaukee. They're like, we can't figure out what's going on with you. Just maybe try going you're from Chicago, maybe try going somewhere in Chicago or Cleveland Clinic, because we're just dumbfounded. We don't know. And, we're admitting we don't know, and, try something else. So I had made an appointment at a hospital in Chicago with a doctor, an endocrinologist, and I hadn't even had an appointment yet. So I wasn't even technically his patient. I called him in the probably 11:30, midnight, something like that. It was really late and just desperate. And he said, you know what? How long will it take you to drive down from Milwaukee to Chicago? I said, I can be there in like 2.5 hours. He's like, I'll meet you there. So he met me there, which was, when I look back, I mean, how crazy is that? I wasn't even his patient. And he met me at the hospital in the middle of the night. He's the one who brought in the hematologist that said, this sounds like porphyria maybe. And so they did a urine test and it came out positive. And they're like, well, this is what you have. And it is I was very, very ill. So I didn't put a lot of trust in that. That's what it was. Cause I had heard along this over 12 years of all this stuff that I've just been explaining. We figured it out. It's hypothyroid. We figured it out. You have an adrenal insufficiency. We figured it out. It's this, it's that. So I was this is the first time that instead of being like, yay, we figured it out, I was like, well, we'll see, and they started doing the treatments. And I got out of the hospital, and a month later, I walked into the doctor's office. Walked in, meaning I was hanging on railings and stuff, very stubborn, but I got myself in there, and I was able to actually stay with the conversation. The doctor's like, you're like a different person. This is great. So I was like, this finally, there's light at the end of this very, very long tunnel. And then all of a sudden my insurance is like, oh, we can't cover that. It's very expensive. It's experimental, which it wasn't. It had been around for decades. And so, but I didn't really know that. The internet isn't it wasn't what it is today. My mom actually found this book written by Desiree Lyon Howe, who is the founder of the American Porphyria Foundation. And that's the first thing that I got when I figured out what I had. And I read it and I was like, oh my, this is exactly what I was going through. And I felt this instant connection with someone I'd never met. My friends and family were great, but when I really heard the story, it was very powerful for me. And at that point, as sick as I was, two things happened. I thought, this woman got better. She made a foundation to help other people. So it is possible to get better from this, because my doctors were kind of like, I was like, well, how long does it take? What do we do? They're like, we don't know. You might have to do this treatment for the rest of your life. It might just be this one time. We don't know. So I had hope from reading her book. And then also I thought to myself, when I get better, I'm going to share my story. So, because I know how much hearing her story helped me. And so I really, that's kind of how everything kind of started, telling my story. And I started at that point volunteering for the APF. I started getting better and better and better. It took me years and years to get better. But I decided that I was feeling almost like myself again. So I wanted to do something big to kind of celebrate that. So I decided to run a marathon, which I'm not a runner. I was a very good skater, but I was never a good runner. And so I ran the marathon and raised awareness and raised funds for the American Porphyria Foundation for the 40th anniversary Chicago Marathon. And I ran it. And it took me a long time to recover from it. But it was I felt like I'm back. And so I just kind of started doing some other projects with the American Porphyria Foundation, since they had been so strong, and especially Desiree in her role had helped me so much. I wanted to be involved and help other people because it helped me so much. And so that's kind of how it started. And then basically I was asked to be on the board of the APF, and then finally the director, because Desiree was retiring. And I am very honored to have been able to take this position to help other people and hopefully help them so they don't have to go through so much like what I went through and what they're currently going through, to try to shorten this delay to diagnosis with education and just doing everything I can to build on what the APF has already done over the last, 41 years. So as a long answer to your question, sorry.
Well, no, that's wonderful. Just a couple of questions for you. The age of that first attack, how old were you when that happened?
I was 24.
Wow.
And I probably had one when I was 19 or 20, and one when first probably when I was like 13 or something like that. But those were just something that I went to the hospital, and then I just, they said it was IBS or gastroenteritis, and then I was fine. But the one that I'm telling you about, that really with the dog and everything, now I was about 24 years old.
Right. So, and then, it's 12 years through this diagnostic odyssey. One of the things that I've learned speaking to, well, I'd say now over 100 different representatives of different rare disease organizations, is a lot of them are personally connected to the disease itself. And so by extension, their expertise, despite not being formally trained, in any medical training at all, have become expert in their area by necessity. So that's either, in your case, you personally, a lot of instances, it's, parents for the sake of their children. And, I'm wondering how things are different now, or how you're helping to make things different insofar as circumnavigating that diagnostic odyssey. So you spoke to, okay, well, how we got to the diagnosis in the first place was the urinalysis, which is not necessarily part of a comprehensive screen. You're going to have, some medical practitioner who, in the off chance, has experience with rare disease. I suppose this will get better with, AI and enhanced medical databases for sure. But again, it's the battery of tests. They can be, not infinite, but in order to be exhaustive, certainly impractical. So, how do you zoom in to let's say abolish the diagnostic odyssey? And I'm interested also a little bit insofar as the pathology of porphyria, given your expertise in it. You talk about flare ups. So to the extent that you're comfortable mechanistically, how does that take form? And then the second question was along the diagnostic odyssey is maybe thematically with the conversation today. How does DNA, how does whole genome sequencing, how is that going to help rare disease, shorten the time to an answer? So two questions there. One on porphyria pathology, and then two more generally on the diagnostic odyssey. How do we shorten it? What work are you doing already? And then part two of number two is how is DNA going to help?
So I would say that DNA is actually part of the answer to the first question as well. I think, how is it, you also asked, how has it changed from when I was diagnosed in 2006 to now we're looking at almost, 20 years later.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is the same. And a lot has changed. And what has stayed the same is my parents were an advocate, especially my mom, as far as when I wasn't, my insurance was not going to pay for the drug. She kept pushing and pushing. She's like, she finally saw something that was going to help. A neurologist had told my mom and I before I got diagnosed, you just have to accept your daughter's going to be like this for the rest of her life. And even in my state of mind that wasn't with it, I was thinking, how does he know that if he doesn't know what I have? So the burden really is on the families and the patients. And the APF has always been able to help with that by giving out, information. But now with social media, it's just a lot more. We didn't have that back then, really, and that made a big difference. We have support groups online, and when I said it helped to speak with other patients, you find out other things from people. You can get in and ask questions almost immediately, get answers, and you have that support and that knowledge at your fingertips. If you look at it, you don't have to, go to the library or, go somewhere and research about it. So a lot of so all that stuff is a lot better. And we have genetic testing now, and the APF does have free genetic testing for anyone that has symptoms for the acute porphyrias, and that's a game changer. So I think a lot of it has stayed the same. That the burden is really on the patient and the caregivers, and a lot of times, more than ever, the last 2 years, we've been having a lot of doctors calling us because the patients are out there getting the information, getting their genetic test, because anyone can order it, and bringing this information to their doctor and saying, we can't figure out what it is. Is it this? Can you please look at this? And then some doctors won't be willing to learn something new, or they'll say, maybe go to hematologist, hepatologist, neurologist, I'm just not going to deal with it. Or they'll kind of learn about it and jump in. But so the patient having to really keep trying. And of course, no one knows your body better than you do, so you have to keep trying. No one's going to care about you as much as you do. But so I think that, doing this genetic testing is great. The biochemical testing and the genetic testing is very important to do both, because just because you have, I don't need to tell you this, but just because you have a genetic mutation for something doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have active symptoms of the disease. So in porphyria, it's somewhere like 5 to 10%. Don't quote me on that, but it's about 5 to 10% of the people that have mutations actually have symptoms. And it kind of comes up by triggers. Like I mentioned earlier, stress. There are certain drugs that are unsafe, the way they're metabolized for porphyria patients to have it, that they get very ill, especially if you don't know that you have porphyria, so you can't get treatment. A lot of, people can die that way, and you die with your autonomic nervous system, like your lungs and your heart can shut down, your respiratory muscles, paralyze. And that's the way that you can die from that. I always feel like now that I know what I have and I can get treatment, I don't worry about that as much anymore. I'm getting a little off the subject, but basically it's, drugs, alcohol, the, smoking, stress, even someone with porphyria, even a cold or something, it just affects you a lot more because you have this other thing going on. So one of those things might trigger this disease to start showing symptoms. So the DNA test is great, but now the question is, are these symptoms that you're having that sound like porphyria, are they porphyria, or could they be something else? Because I said it looks like a lot of other more common diseases. So the biochemical testing is great because if a patient does the urine testing, and then there's also fecal testing that can be done for different types of porphyrias or different tests, but the screening is usually the urine test, and it tells you if you're in an active attack. Right. So, and it's also can be diagnostic, because that's what we used before, we had the DNA. And also what I've been explained is the DNA, it's very, very accurate, but it's not 100%. So I know that there's some things about that could slip through. That's why I'm very excited about the full genome sequencing, because as you said, we've been kind of talking the last couple months, and a doctor on our scientific advisory board has told me a lot of porphyria mutations could be in the regulatory DNA, which we're not testing in the other tests. So I think that, for a lot of patients that still are doing the testing and they're not coming up with something, I think it's going to be really great for them to be able to try that, to see if maybe it's rare that those tests aren't accurate or that they're missing something. And sometimes they have those variants of unknown significance. So it may turn out to be something in the future, once this becomes more mainstream or it's easy to do. One of the things, and I probably told you this, but it's amazing to me how many people call in and say, my doctor won't do the test. He won't order the genetic test. He says it's rare and there's no way I could have it. And so, there are also other problems. Even with all the technology that we have, we still need doctors to order things, and get it going. With the full genome testing, you don't have to have a doctor order it. You can just do it. It's not free like the other DNA testing, but it's more comprehensive and can give you more information about every other part of, your any other diseases and things that you may be susceptible to or have genetic, I don't know, to be able to have that.
Mhm.
So I think the fact that, and also, and to add on to that, something that we're about to launch right now, there's a program where people can order their own urine test as well.
Mhm.
You know, like I think I said that the test should be done while the patient is having symptoms, but sometimes they can't get into the doctor to get the test ordered till a couple weeks later, a month later, and then they're no longer sick. And so maybe those levels will still be there, but maybe they won't. There are different types where it stays in the urine longer or shorter periods of time, and it stays in the fecal matter longer. So, I think putting these tools into patients' hands where they have more control to go ahead and do these tests when they need it. Of course, you need to have the proper education to know where to go, what to order. That's what we're here to help. But it's also, you also don't want to be your own Dr. Google and try to decide things. It's a give and take. I think, we need both, but I think, I don't know if that answered one of the questions, but
Yeah, no, it's good. It gives me a sense of, how things are progressing today. And, one of the things you mentioned with respect to, DNA and your partnership with sequencing.com, by the way, the founder, CEO, Dr. Brandon Colby, is himself a, medical geneticist. So trained as a medical doctor and trained in genetics. And actually, he himself challenged with rare disease epidermolysis bullosa simplex. And it really wasn't until he had his whole genome sequenced that he was able to discern unequivocally, yes, I have the homozygous recessive version of that disease. And, I think about your audience, and I think about like the rare disease audience in general, like they are, very much committed to finding answers. They're very much taking on this role of citizen scientist, and the tools, for example, it's not just the whole genome sequencing. It's actually the bioinformatics software that you can use to interrogate all of that data. So, softwares like Genome Explorer, you can actually query based on, say, known genes or known accession numbers, even if they are, unclassified at this point. So it really does present a scenario where the genome speaks for itself. And then, this notion that you only need to be sequenced once, and then, you can, query multiple times, query often, based on new information. And what's nice there is you've got an application like HealthScan, which is actually, connected to the research databases where the new findings are, presented to peer-reviewed published journals, and again, added to these databases. So not just for porphyria, but for all rare disease, you have access to the latest information, because while your genome isn't going to change, what we're learning is going to, the pace at which we're learning is going to increase exponentially, especially with projects like, you think about the human genome. It was, I think it's 10 or to 20 individuals were considered to build the first draft of the human genome, and then once we could do that, like that project, I think was around $4 billion. It became more cost effective. Then it became, well, let's do the 1,000 genomes project, and then let's do the 100,000 genome project. Let's do the million genome project. Now we have the All of Us project in the US, which is the 10 million genome project. And so what we're doing and what we're getting by those studies is more context on, call it the human metagenome. So you get more information, more context on all the different gene variants that exist in humanity, and those may correlate with different ancestry, and in terms of rare disease, there may be multiple variants. So it's really about building community around these insights. And the really exciting thing is, now here we are. Precipice is AI, artificial intelligence, and I know that sequencing.com has made, or it has already introduced an artificial intelligence version of their software to actually allow you to have a conversation with the genome. But you can imagine getting to a point where you can create a much more advanced porphyria report based on the whole genome. And then, of course, that's like a detection, right? It's not a diagnostic, it's a detection. But then, you bring this information, to the right physician, and maybe instead of the diagnosis taking 12 years, it takes 12 months. I mean, isn't that an improvement? Hopefully 12 days at some point, right? And
Right.
12 hours. And I think that's a lot of pain that we can help to avoid. And, I think about our discussion, like you've been very, what would you say? I think responsible in terms of how we pursue this partnership. For example, it isn't just here's your data, see you later. It's like, well, do you have genetic counselors associated with the program? And so it's true, we do, right? So you have your data, and then you can, you can also book with a genetic counselor to have them walk you through, because not everybody has expertise in genetics. So
Right.
the fact that technology can bring together different experts is pretty exciting. And well, the interesting thing is, already at this juncture, like we haven't formally launched our partnership, but you've already got people reaching out, and you've recommended the resource. What are you finding in terms of the kinds of people that are reaching out, and what kind of benefits are they hoping to get from this?
Well, like I was saying before, the people that have for years been trying to figure out what's going on, they've had the genetic test, and it's either it's a variant of unknown significance, and they don't know if it's pathogenic yet. So their doctor may not be like, okay, your symptoms are there. Let's just go ahead and clinically try to diagnose you and just treat you and see if it's going to work. Some doctors do, some don't. And then, but without that, the biochemical testing, it's difficult. So, and for some porphyrias, it's hard to do and access. People in more rural areas, they don't have as good of access to the laboratories and the doctors being able to kind of give them standing orders. All doctors are, to have these tests done. So when they are sick, they can go ahead and just go do the test without having to set up an appointment and everything. And all this time goes by. So, I think that the kind of people that I've, that have reached out to me, that I've recommended, they've kind of done everything, and they still think that they could possibly have porphyria, and they just want to see if there's anything else that they can do. And since the sequencing of the genome is so much more than just, what we're doing for these, quote unquote porphyria genes, which what I understand from you and Dr. Manick when we were talking, that, we may find more genes that are involved at a later date and everything like that. So it's those people that have tried everything, and to see if they can figure it out. And also to see if the other thing is that we get a lot too is, okay, so I'm negative. So what else could it be?
Exactly.
What else? And, it's hard to say because, we're not experts in other diseases, but, a lot of times we can bring out a couple things that we know, like I was telling you, like the endometriosis, but usually people have kind of gone through all that already. And it seems that a lot of rare people that have rare diseases oftentimes have more than one. And so my hope is also with people that haven't been able to get a diagnosis, whether genetically or biochemically, that if they do take this test, whether it's positive for porphyria or not, that maybe it shows something else that could give them a next step to say, okay, now I'm going to go to a doctor and try to find out about this. They can we'll always help patients that call us, but if we don't know about a disease, we're not experts. We're experts in, well, I wouldn't say experts, but we focus on porphyria, and we have people all over the world, but if they can have another step that they can go after this.
Mhm.
I really hope that's what I'm hoping too, that there's some way with the genetic counseling and then the AI, that when you can talk to the genome, which I don't fully understand yet, but
Mhm.
I'm just hoping they can maybe continue their search and try to figure out if there's anything else that shows up that they could at least test for, look at, because people get very, very tired.
Mhm.
For me, 12 years was a long time. I have a friend, 19 years. We have people that, don't get diagnosed till they're in their 60s or 70s, and they've been dealing with it all their lives, and so it's heartbreaking. And, it's, if, like you said, if that can be shortened, if they can figure that out or find out what else it could be, that's the biggest thing. And I think that's, another reason I think that, I had asked you, one of the people was for an infant, and they,
Right.
that way they can order it themselves, get it all done. And so, those are the reasons why we've kind of been, recommending it,
Mm-hmm.
even though we haven't fully, figured, like officially started working on this. But I'm hoping that it'll be helpful to people.
Well, it's been, really enlightening developing our partnership. I get to learn, a lot about you, a lot about your community. How big would you say your community is to date?
We have over 18,000 members, and in over 120 countries.
Yeah.
We are one of the oldest foundations, but we are definitely the largest foundation in the world. And so we oftentimes we have helped. I should say, and Desiree did this. She had a great global program with the APF that was trying to have other countries start their own foundations. We give them everything that we know about it, let them translate it into their language, give them support to try to help them get started and help their patients. And we're also part of this global porphyria advocacy coalition, and we're always meeting and finding ways that we can try to make everything more consistent all over the globe. Right. And so with 18,000 members, that's a lot of people. Not all of them are patients. Some are caregivers, about 6,000 are doctors, but I'd say probably about, I don't know exactly, but probably 11 to 12,000 are patients. And we're very busy. We talk to probably about 30 new patients a day. Now, not everybody has porphyria, mind you, but at least we give them the tools that they can take to their doctor, talk to their doctor, get the genetic test, so that let their doctor know which biochemical testings are needed for the types of porphyria that they think their patient might have and things like that. Yeah. So, it's a big community. Mm-hmm. And I feel that we have a large obligation to help other countries grow their communities and assist them in getting the right information. It's very difficult sometimes. The US has a very different medical system than even Italy, Canada. There was a girl a couple of weeks ago. It's very sad. She was in Costa Rica, and she knew she had porphyria, and she was in the hospital, and she was intubated, and she was in ICU, and they needed to get her the treatment. Treatment is not available through a Social Security system in Costa Rica. We immediately reached out to everyone in the world to see if we could somehow get this medicine there, but it was very difficult. They weren't able to do it. The manufacturer was amazing. Found a distributor in Costa Rica. We were all working together to try to help this patient who was 23 years old. And she has a twin sister, and she ended up passing away because we weren't able to get there soon enough. So, we'd like to try to help these countries that don't have the resources that we have here up. They have different types of problems. I was talking to the president of the Mexican Society, and there's a patient that has to walk 2 hours to get their treatment. We have patients that can't drive 5 minutes to get their, these are a lot of different problems that need to be addressed. And, so through GPAC and obviously because we are present in so many countries, we're always trying to rise up, help these countries rise up. But, there are just so many political things too that are just very difficult to overcome for the doctors. Even they're not allowed to order the medicine. They were told it was going to be a couple months before they could get it approved, and she just didn't have that time. That's why we were trying to, the doctor, we were just all working together. So it's very tragic. Another girl in Honduras who passed away from an unsafe medicine and couldn't get the treatment. And again, 20 years old. So we have a lot of work to do.
Well, it sounds
again, I'm sorry, it's another long answer to your question.
No, this is great. This is the point, right? It's about building awareness and, one of the things we talked about at the top of the call is, well, how do you de-rarify rare disease, right? Because I
Right.
think it really is about, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I do think there is, there's the opportunity that comes from, building let's call it a larger health data refinery, and amortizing the costs associated with that. It's like, you build the thing once, and maybe that costs $10 million or $25 million, whatever it costs what it costs. But there's one additional setup, but then how do you seamlessly plug in different rare disease registries such as yours, so that you can scale. Standard of care, I think, is the first point of contact, right? It's like we're not going to get to cures overnight, but we can certainly get to standard of care.
Mhm.
We can start to understand the different, how these different variants present differently, how the same variants present differently as a result of other lifestyle factors, or genetic factors. But certainly having that information collected and organized is a great jumping off point. And the great thing about your members, if they're getting their whole genome sequencing at with sequencing.com, I mean, I know they own the data. If it's something that you'd like to do to organize research around that, we'd be happy to help you, start to think about strategically how that might be done, because it really is access to information in context. So with that being said, I mean, you're at the helm now of APF. What's the hopeful future? What are we tracking towards? What are your short-term goals, and what's your long-term vision?
Well, short-term goals, the most important thing, and it sounds way too simple, but it is awareness and education.
Yeah.
And the way that happens changes over time with technology, but it's still the most important thing is to get the proper information.
Mhm.
Something very exciting in porphyria is that we are very, very lucky to have 3 FDA approved drugs.
Right.
And for acute porphyrias, there's panhematin, which is it's a drug that's supposed to stop when you're having an attack. If you have acute porphyria, you get this treatment and it's supposed to just stop the attack. That's the drug that saved my life. Just recently, in the last couple of years, we have a new drug called Givlari. That drug is a once monthly injection, and it's supposed to stop people from having attacks in the first place. Those two drugs do totally different things and can be used together for a patient. We have for cutaneous porphyrias, for EPP, which stands for erythropoietic protoporphyria. There's an FDA approved drug called Scenesse, and that drug is an implant that patients get about every 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how long it lasts for them. And sometimes they do it all year. Sometimes they can take the winters off, depending on where they live and how sensitive to the sun that they are, because they're very photosensitive. And so it's very different symptoms from what I explained. Acute intermittent porphyria, which I have, is the only porphyria that doesn't have the photosensitivity. So these patients are able, some are so sensitive to the sun, but also to some wavelengths of indoor light. They are really isolated because they can't go outside a lot. Someone may have 2 minutes cumulatively their whole day that they can stand being in the sun. I'm sitting next to a window right now. If I had a cutaneous porphyria, I probably would not, or one of the other acute porphyrias where you have sun sensitivity, I wouldn't be able to do that. When you're driving, you have to figure out where are you sitting in the driver's side? Where's the sun? All this stuff. And, so all these people that have been very isolated and not been able to do so many things that their friends and family and everything have done, and then feel guilty that their families haven't been able to do stuff because of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're now able to go outside and it's life-changing. So these therapies are amazing, and there are 2 more drugs in the pipeline, and they're trials that are going on for EPP, and I know that they're doing studies if Scenesse can be used for variegate porphyria, which is an acute porphyria. It has the acute symptoms I was talking about, as well as the photosensitivity, and we're hoping that that's going to help. And we're going to be having an educational Zoom about that, about the initial results from the study coming out soon. But I think having all these therapies and AI, and I can't even tell you how AI would really change things, but I think we always say those who know the most do the best. And the most information that you can get is going to help you take the next step. And sometimes that's all you need is what is the next step.
Right.
Currently, this would be something where we're kind of going into the AI, with this product with gene sequencing. But there are so many other ways. I was talking to one of our scientific advisory board members, and he was telling me all these different things, how it would change research and everything using AI, just making, like you were saying, faster. Just there are so many ways to just cut down the times. But right now, I would say we were part of building a group of experts, and through all the awareness that we've been doing over all these years, they are now, a lot of the experts will not see porphyria patients unless you already have a diagnosis. So now we're back to those doctors. Became more and more doctors that knew how to diagnose and treat porphyria. Now we're back to, if they're not going to take patients that are diagnosed, how do we get patients properly diagnosed? And again, like I already brought it up, we have these doctor packets that we send out. We're more than ever before, we're focusing on PCPs and GPs, because that's usually the first place a person goes to, I'm not feeling well. They go to their family doctor. And our Porphyria Awareness Week this year, which happened in April, our slogan was Think Porphyria. And that's really, I think, one of the most important things that we can say to anybody is think porphyria. Think about it. You can test for it. There are treatments for it. Many rare diseases, I think a huge percentage of rare diseases do not have treatments. And I think by having more access and working together with organizations like NORD, or their National Organization for Rare Diseases, they're going to be, we're all connected. The more information that we can share, like you said, leverage the information to be able to use that as a community, but also in our separate little groups, finding new ways to get the information out. And so we're very excited about the fact that there are a lot of doctors that are, I don't want to say just regular doctors because they're wonderful physicians, but in our mind, sometimes we think, oh, it's got to be a hematologist, it's got to be a hepatologist, it's got to be a dermatologist, it's got to be a neurologist to treat me. These doctors are finding it very interesting to learn about a new disease, and because I think maybe it's because they've known this patient for a very long time, so they have a connection. They're willing to go a little bit above and beyond, and so that's something that we're really working on, is to educate more doctors that normally wouldn't be testing for porphyria, to just give them the tools and the proper. We have this diagnostic primer that like I was saying, that tells them exactly how to do it properly, and then educating on the treatments. I mean, these doctor packets, we have all the treatments that are for each type of porphyria that we send with them, so they can learn about it. And then we also, a lot of industry have patient facing representatives that can explain a lot to the patients. We can put that out there, but we don't talk about the specifics of it. And so they get a lot of support that way. So I guess currently that's what we're working on. And it seems to be, like I said, we've had more doctors than ever calling in. And then in the future, just, really trying to make, like, if the full genome sequencing could be available to everybody, which it is, but, for a lot of rare disease patients, they're so sick, they're on disability, they can't afford it. I know I've talked to you a lot about this, and, but I do believe it's a great value. And so far the people I've talked to have said, we're going to go ahead and do it, because they're very desperate, and they just would like some answers.
So it sounds to me like there's like the immediate goal is education, right? Immediate focus is education, and
Yep.
through that, getting probably to better care and better standards of care. And then it sounds to me like there's a longer term play, which is more in line with the precision medicine route. So like the collecting and the organizing of the data and pushing the boundaries of care to improve it. And so it's really nice, high touch, high tech combination. And again, I think what I was saying at the top of the call, I think rare disease really is the tip of the spear, because, I think the stats as I remember, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's around, there's 300 million rare disease that are diagnosed. Who's to say how many are undiagnosed? But I don't think I'm being too crazy by saying maybe twice that amount, so 600
Yeah.
million, right? So and then you've got family members that are affected by this. So
Right.
it's easily over 1 billion people who are carrying this every day. And the fact is, we're also different in terms of our genetics, more generally speaking, that we know that the efficacy of prescription drugs only improve when genetics is brought in to the picture, when the diversity, human diversity in the human metagenome is brought in to the research picture. The therapeutic, the efficacy of the therapeutics only improve. So, I mean, it sounds like a massive undertaking. Very privileged to be speaking to you today. I want to congratulate you on your partnership with
Thank you.
sequencing.com. And Nicole, just in terms of people who want to reach out to you, because part of this partnership is spreading the awareness. How do people who think they have symptoms of porphyria, or know somebody they do, or just want to reach out and help to better understand rare disease, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, first of all, we've got a very robust website with a lot of information. There's a patient portal, a physician portal, and that's porphyriafoundation.org. We have 7 Facebook groups we're just at American Porphyria Foundation. And then we get you into these, there's some open groups, private groups where you can be in the type of porphyria that you have, or you think you have, to be asking questions and stuff like that. On Twitter, or I should say on X, we're Porphyria_help, and American Porphyria Foundation on Instagram as well. The best way to get in touch with us if you want direct communication would be to email general@porphyriafoundation.org, and just let us know how we can help you. We're always here. We are always here for our patients. Our guiding principle and founding ideology is patients first, and so that's really great. I wanted to say one thing, actually, to speak to what you were just talking about, about the future and everything. I really think that, right now, I was mentioning that we have a drug list of drugs that are okay for porphyria patients and ones that are dangerous for porphyria patients. Someone may still have a personal sensitivity, but basically how they're metabolized, it's all broken down, that whether or not it should be safe. And that's also on our website.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like you were saying, as far as there are new medications coming out all the time with AI, being able to kind of, really look at these drugs faster and get the information. And if there is genetic, like people have reactions to things. I don't know why it makes one person is more sensitive in one way than another, but if they can, if we can make progress on that and find out, I think that would be really great. So when you were saying that, it was just an exciting thing that I was just thinking about. And also, my dream is, and it's a very big one that I don't think the APF could possibly ever even do. But right now, I don't know if you've been in the hospital, but usually they run a battery of tests. And then if nothing pops up, they kind of have a secondary thing like autoimmune diseases and things like that. It'd be really great when that comes up with nothing, that there's a third tier of tests for rare diseases. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Or at least the ones that we know the most about, and trying to get that in there. So, I mean, I just think if we could get there, it would be great, because like I said, we go to our primary care and we're also going to the emergency room for things. And so if we could just get these, or not the emergency room necessarily, because they're not there to diagnose, but the hospital being able to test for these things. So I'm sorry to kind of juggle that in there, but that's
smart. That's smart. So you're thinking, so number one is there's a general tier, then there's the autoimmunity tier, and then you're saying tier 3 is rare disease.
Yeah, I mean, it would be amazing. It's a huge project that would, I have no idea how much money that would take, but a lot. I think that I've talked with other leaders around the world, and they think it'd be amazing too. So it just would be very helpful. Of course, each panel of tests doesn't have every single disease, so it may not help a lot of people, but it may. So maybe that's on the horizon in the distant future, or hopefully near future. But that would be something I think that would be really, really helpful to. And also, even if the test, if the testing's there and there is a third tier, doctors maybe would again look up symptoms and think, maybe this could be porphyria. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe this could be Ehlers-Danlos. Maybe this could be, so, it's just, I think it would really, anything we can do to start thinking about it and And I guess we just have to keep beating our drums as hard as we can to get the information out there. And that's what we're here for.
Oh, that's great. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing today. I'm happy to be beating the drum with you and getting this out into into the community. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experience, your vision with us, and I look forward to circling back with you soon and having you back on the show.
Great. Well, thank you so much for everything you've done, and you've been so wonderful. I know like you said, I've been very picky about everything, but you've really gone deep and answered our questions and stuff. And as a community, we really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Oh, our absolute pleasure, Nicole. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the DNA of Things. Today, Nicole Castellano illuminated how rare diseases like porphyria can disrupt lives, but can also inspire change and advocacy. Through her story, we saw the power of persistence and the promise of DNA technology to offer answers, hope, and healing. We hope this episode inspires you to think differently about health, resilience, and our genetic potential. If you enjoyed the conversation, please do share this episode and help raise awareness about rare disease. Together, we can de-rarify rare disease and support those affected worldwide. Thank you.